Hey, this is Jana from Purl Together. This next video, I will show you how to join your knitting in the round using double pointed needles. So that way you can just knit round and round and round and there's no seaming involved. So I'm going to show you my favorite technique, which is a long circular needle using the magic loop method. So right here I've cast on 80 stitches. What I'm going to do is find the halfway point of my stitches, which I've placed a marker there. So that's 40 stitches. And then I'm going to pull my circular needle through so that this marker is about at the halfway point of the cable part of my needle. Then I'm simply going to remove the marker, keeping my fingers at that spot, and I'm going to kind of bend that there and pull it through, okay? So what I've done now is separated my work into two halves. So I have the top half of my stitches, the first 40 and the last 40, and my two needles are parallel here. And then you can see the loop, the rest of the loop here. So I'm going to just work this down to the ends, being careful not to twist anything. I want my my cast on edge to be on the inside. So this is actually the first 40 that I cast on, and then the last 40 that I cast on here is on the bottom. I like, some people do it differently. I like to arrange it this way. It's just what works easiest for me over the years. And I want to even this out, just stretch everything out, make sure that it's not twisted anywhere. You definitely want to make sure nothing's twisted when you're joining in the round. Otherwise, you'll end up with an unintended, weird figure 8 knitted thing. You don't want that. Then I'm going to figure out which is my cast on tail, which is my working yarn. So here's my tail. Here's my working yarn. Take your cast on tail and just kind of drape it over the top of your end stitch here. Then I'm going to pull this bottom needle through so that I can use it. Just be careful you don't pull it so much that you don't want to pull this loop all the way out again. Bring your working needle around. Go into that first stitch as if to purl. Okay, you might have to poke it down to the tapered part to get enough slack to do that. So go in as if to purl, okay? And just take your end tail here, your cast on tail, hold it a little snug, and then just push it through that stitch. Go ahead and pull it all the way through. Because all I'm gonna do now is take this cast on end and I'm going to tie a square knot here over my working yarn, just as a good solid way to secure your ends. That's how I'm going to join into a round, is by doing a square knot here. There are many methods of joining in the round that some are a lot more complicated than this, but this is secure. I know that it will withstand a lot of laundering, especially if I'm going to make something for kids or socks. Hats that are going to be machine washed. I know that's gonna hold up and be secure. Do not cut this. We'll weave it in later. So just leave that. Tuck it out of your way under your finger, and then all you're going to be left with here is your working yarn that's coming from the skein. So bring this end working needle back around and just start knitting. Remember, with the first knit stitch, we're going to go in from the front. We're going to wrap counterclockwise and then pull it through and off, okay? In from the front, around counterclockwise, through and off. Now, I want to do a 2x2 ribbing. So that's knit 2 stitches, then purl 2 stitches. So I want to purl next. Purling requires that my working yarn come off the front. So I'm going to just bring it through the middle so that it is coming toward me. Then to purl, remember, we come in from the back, wrap counterclockwise, push it through and off. In from the back, carefully. You want to be careful not to split a stitch. Actually, I wanted to mention that. You don't want to poke it through like that where you see how that's split? Never good. You want to be mindful not to do that. So in from the back, counterclockwise around, push the loop through and off. Now I've purled 2, and I know that because of the little purl bumps in the front. See how these are flat and those are bumpy? Knit stitches and purl stitches. So take your working yarn back through the center, and now we're going to knit again. In from the front, wrap around, through and off. Okay, we'll do 2 of those. Bring your yarn back towards you through the center, so it's coming out the front, in from the back, purl, or sorry, wrap around counterclockwise, through and off. Okay, so we're just going to knit 2, purl 2 this whole way. You can see what this looks like. We're going to do this all the way down to the halfway point of our needle. And then I'll show you how to get around that when we get down to that halfway end. And what I mean by that is we'll get down to this part right here. Okay? Let me show you what this looks like when we get down to the end. Because I have a multiple of 4 stitches on each needle, it's going to come out evenly. So meaning if my ribbing pattern is knit 2, purl 2, I'm going to end with purl stitches. I always like that because I like to begin each needle with a knit stitch. If I was doing this differently and I had I don't know, 30 on each needle, that's not a multiple of 4, so I'd have to begin the next needle with a purl stitch, and that's not a big deal if you're paying attention. It's just not my personal preference. Okay, so I finished that first top needle, and now I've gotten to my, my halfway point. So what I want to do is I'm going to be careful to pull my cable on the bottom here. I don't know if you can see that. I'm going to be careful to pull the cable on the bottom here, and I'm going to make it so that my needle tips come back together, okay? So it's just like it was at the beginning, but this is my halfway. I've knitted 40 stitches out of my 80. And then here's the rest here, and this is the beginning of my cast on, remember? So I've got the big part of my loop over here, but I can't do this. That's not going to work out so well. So what I need to do now is hang on to your working yarn so you don't widen this out a lot. And I'm going to go ahead and pull this through so that I can bend it back around and use this like this and start my next knit stitch. Now, can you see that in the video where I have 2 loops here on each end? So a loop at the halfway point and a loop at the beginning. So you're just going to have to work those loops around as you after each 40 stitches. So I ended with 2 purls at the halfway point, and now I'm going to begin again with 2 knits. This feels a little fiddly in the beginning, having this loop kind of in your face, but you can always just put it underneath like that. And now I'm doing my purls, so I brought my yarn through to the front, doing my 2 purls here, take my yarn through to the back, do my 2 knit stitches, and carry on until you get to the end. Alright, so I'm almost to the end of my round, and I know that because here's where I tied, and this is my tail from my cast on that I tied to join the round. So some patterns will tell you to place a marker at the beginning of the round. I don't usually feel the need to do that because I have my tail here, and that denotes the beginning of the round. So when I only have 4 stitches left, so that I know I'm going to come out evenly. And by the way, I always double count my cast on before I join in the round, just to make sure that I've cast on indeed the number that I thought. Alright, so we're done with that first round. And I'm going to do the same thing again. I'll show you this one more time. At my halfway point, whether that's 40 stitches for me, or whether that halfway is 60 or 80 or however many that you have. This is Oliver. I'm sure he will make many appearances in future videos because he can't stand it. He loves knitting. We're going to pull this, we're going to pull the cable pull and push so that both of my needle tips are together. This is again the beginning of my round. Now I'm going to take my working needle, what needs to become my working needle. This is the stitch I just finished. I'm going to pull it through, being careful not to, I don't want to pull it so much that I pull this loop all the way out. Okay? If you accidentally do that, it's not that big of a crisis. You would just count to your halfway point. Whoopsie, I just did that. Oh dear. You would just count to your halfway point, grab it, and pull it back again the other way. You can fix it. Knitting is always fixable. And just, I will tell you this over and over. You are the boss of your knitting. You can do it. So just pull this through enough where you can curl this around, and we'll have Oliver be our backdrop. Oh, there he goes, because I irritated him. And we're going to start again with your knit stitch. You want to be mindful not to, because this is loose and it's on your cable rather than a needle, you want to be careful not to pull it too tight. You want it secure so you don't have a loose stitch there, but don't pull it too tight. So then we're just going to carry on knitting and purling for the designated amount of rows or until it makes you happy. And it's the ribbing edge width that you prefer for either yourself or your intended recipient. Okay, so knit on. As always, let me know if you have any questions. Check out our Facebook group, and we're getting the Ravelry group started. So if you're on Facebook, go there. There's more information there currently. Leave a comment here on YouTube or in the Facebook group for now. Okay, knit on.